EU5 is turning half a year, and in that time we have seen a range of patches and updates with numerous changes. Of course, Paradox isn't the only ones working on the game, as modders have embraced this title as their own and are creating new scenarios and timelines at breakneck speeds for something this massive and complicated. In this video then, I'm going to show you the best and biggest total conversion mods for EU5 in no particular order. And as usual, the mods on this list need to be at least semi-up-to-date and actually make an effort to convert the ordinary EU5 timeline to something else, whether that is alternate history, another historical scenario, or a different world altogether. If that sounds good to you, I hope you'll consider leaving a like on the video, a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. And let me know if there's any total conversion mods I have forgotten to include. Mod number 1 is Anno 1644, the General Crisis, a total conversion mod that does the impossible and moves the start date 300 years into the future and the end stage of the 30 Years' War, all the while creating a world that feels as though it were always meant to be this way. You can immediately tell how different this era is by looking at the map. Despite Germany remaining fragmented, France, Spain, Austria, Sweden, Russia, and Poland-Lithuania are in many ways at their territorial height thus far, while the Ottoman Empire is essentially at its absolute historical peak. In the New World, European powers have made landfall with scattered colonies in the north, while Spain and Portugal dominate in the south. For now, Africa remains free of European colonial occupation, while the Mughal Empire stretches across most of India. And in East Asia, the Ming dynasty is in control of China, while the Tokugawa shogunate in Japan has become the true hegemon of the islands. England is probably the outlier here, marred as it is by civil war, which has split the country in two. The mod begins at a time when the 30 Years' War hangs in the balance, but also where one age, the Age of Crisis, in only 3 years will pave way for the Age of Absolutism, in some ways mimicking the vanilla transition from the Age of Traditions to the Age of Renaissance. If you have been frustrated with how the vanilla game often strays from the historical path of nations a bit too much, 1644 essentially fixes that to some extent by beginning in an age where the empires you expect to be there really are. In addition, the modders are active, offering separate beta versions to the mods before releasing them in full if you want to stay completely up to date. In other words, check out 1644 if you want to begin EU5 in the Age of Empires. Mod number 2 is perhaps a familiar one, Project Variety, which also has a much more expanded version for Victoria 3. Project Variety is a mod that focuses on gameplay and fun, relatively balanced multiplayer opportunities over historical accuracy, shaping nations to be of roughly equal strength compared to the vanilla game, and the mod is in an early stage but is still being worked on, with the content currently changing the situation in Europe and parts of North America. You'll see, for example, that France is split into various powers like a strong independent Toulouse and Brittany, England is partly ruled by the Danelaw and Northumberland, Portugal, Castile, Aragon, and Granada are balancing the scales of power in Iberia, and Eastern Europe is, well, Eastern Europing. The same goes for the Middle East, where Egypt has been made weaker by the presence of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and where various countries now dot the map. And North America is essentially now Norse America with, yes, the actual Norse religion intact. Project Variety also adds a number of new events, decisions, and formable nations, and is overall aiming for a fun, diverse, and exciting style of campaign. It will only get better in the future, so if you find this type of thing fun, make sure to check it out. Mod number 3 is an incredibly interesting mod, a prequel to the Victoria 3 mod by the same name, namely Basileia Romaion 1337, a medieval version of 1736. The concept is similar, however. The Byzantine Empire dominates where East and West meets, but its empire is split into a host of Orthodox states now. Islam is also broken in hundreds of various states, with Al-Andalus and Iberia and Egypt being the two strongest contenders for the leading role. In other words, both Byzantium and Egypt contend for domination in the Near East, while Al-Andalus must prove itself against oncoming Christian armies from the north. Near the entirety of Western and Central Europe now lie within the Holy Roman Empire, but the emperor must consolidate power if he wishes to contend with up-and-coming kingdoms in Hungary, Bohemia, Poland, and of course the Muslims coming from Iberia. In the north, the Vikings reigned supreme, with the Norwegian Emperor Johan Sigurdsson leading the North Sea Empire spanning Norway, Denmark, England, and various vassals across the sea. And actually across the sea, a small Roman colony has long since established itself in North America, but is split in two, a Christian colony and a Roman Hellenic one, competing for the title of true heir to the legacy and legitimacy of their shared Roman heritage. And further north, a scattered Norse pagan colony lives on in their new homeland far away from their Northman ancestors from old seafaring expeditions no doubt. Basileia Romaion offers one of the coolest alternate history scenarios in Paradox modding, already well underway and is frequently updated, and if you already know it from Victoria 3 and want the EU5 prequel version, this is probably the perfect mod for you. Mod number 4, and I have to say, there is something extra special about 1444, the Dawn of Discovery, and it comes down to its simple yet monumental task: to turn the clock forward 107 years from 1337 to 1444, and gives us the classic EU5 starting date experience. Much more so than 1337, 1444 stands at the dawn of the Age of Discovery, just 50 years before the historical European discovery of America, just 50 years before the historical finalization of the Spanish Reconquista in Iberia, just a decade before the formal end of the 100 Years' War between England and France, and a decade before the Ottoman conquest of Constantinople and the end of the Orthodox Roman Empire. It is a time of competing Islamic powers in the Middle East, whether we're talking the Ottomans, the Mamluk Egyptians, or the large hegemons in Mesopotamia. And because of EU5's scope, you'll see this time period in a much more granular light. The amount of vassals aligned with England, France, Burgundy's back, Bohemia, Lithuania, or Kara Kryonlu for example, is staggering, but really shows the varied political landscape of this time so much better than EU4 ever could. And because we're so close to the beginning of the colonial era, you're much more likely than in 1337 to see countries like Castile, Portugal, England, and France actually make it to the New World. 1444, the Dawn of Discovery, is continuously being worked on, and even though there are some things I believe are yet to be truly overhauled, like tech for example and certain international organizations, the mod is in a great place as is, which is also to say this is one impressive and nostalgic total conversion mod. The last functioning great mod on this list is number 5, and it's quite a different one, namely Elf Destiny. Here, you are able to take charge of one of several elven colonies located fairly isolated in and around Siberia, but you actually have small enclaves elsewhere as well, such as on Cyprus and on Ireland. But even if you begin as a human, you can fund an expedition to seek out the mysteries of the elves and even become one yourself, as the mod utilizes an amazing genetic trait, a la CK3, to differentiate between humans and elves, and these traits can even be passed down to children. This is not just an elven LARP mod, by the way, it's in fact one of the more detailed ones. The elves have their own attributes reminiscent of those in Crusader Kings that determine things like lifespan, fertility, and governing ability. They have their own estates like the royal Fey Lords, the aristocratic Eldar, priestesses, and craftsmen. There's new technology specifically for the elves, new buildings, new events and storylines, and a new elvish religion. In some ways, Elf Destiny is not a total conversion on a global scale per se, even though everyone can become elvish, but the elves additions and their unique gameplay styles absolutely warrant a place on this list. So if you love a bit of fantasy in your historical strategy game that can shake things up quite a bit, and want a similar but refreshing, fun and innovative take on EU5, make sure to check this one out. EU5 naturally does not offer as many total conversion mods as other Paradox games, owed to its comparatively young age, but perhaps also due to its many systems and frequent patching that can be tough to keep up with. Whatever the reason, I think it's a small miracle that we have what we have to begin with, and I hope to see much more from the mods we have, the ones currently in development, and the ones not even envisioned yet in the future. Make sure to let me know what you think of these mods and this list in the comments, and tell me if there's any mod I have forgotten. Thank you so much for watching, remember to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more like this, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!